Tonight on the Cover One Buffalo podcast, we are joined by Brack to break down Cardinals Bills Week 1. But first, our guys, Hanson Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, football is back. It's a preview show. We made it. This is the real deal.
We got football tomorrow night, Greg.
Woo!
Right? Real football. Real NFL football. We made it. Dude, it's a grind. A shout out. This isn't, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I'm going to a little bit in a generalization here.
These backs won't pat themselves.
Yeah, dude, it's a lot of work to pat my own back. But shout out content creators everywhere, man. It is a grind to get through the off season sometimes, and the discourse. I don't know. We'll talk about when he comes on, but the discourse and fans in the off season can get real hairy out there. So shout out to all the content creators. I've been reaching out to all of our friends in the content creation universe of just, hey, you made it. Congratulations. Now this is the easy part, Greg. We get to sit back and talk Bills football, real regular season games. I've been waiting all year for this, buddy.
Whew. So obviously tonight's show brought to you by our friends at the William Mattar Law Offices. Hurt in a car, call William Mattar. You know the number. Make sure that you reach out to him in any of your needs. We'll talk about him a little bit later and maybe how we can pump the brakes on a couple things we need to be careful of. But first, let's jump right in. We are bringing on our new friend and first-time guest on the show, Mr. Brack. How we doing?
Greg, Aaron, glad to be here. Excited to talk some ball. I share the excitement with you guys. We're through the off season, and now we're at official preview mode of Week 1 of the NFL season.
Whew. So, I think you are in a similar spot where I think the Bills were a couple years ago, where you're now probably feeling like you're coming out of a bit of a turn, but legit reason for optimism. You feel like you have the quarterback. You feel like you have some nice new pieces and weapons. Maybe not everything put together the way you want, but things to like grab onto to be like, hey, this is going to be fun. What are the overall thoughts on the Cards off season and how it's coming together, under, I'll admit, a coach that Aaron and I poked a little fun at last year, and that just undeniably like, hey, his thing works and it's resonating and they're playing hard for him. So like we can all goof about some of the sound bites and some of the things like that, but when it registers in the locker room, who cares how it comes across? How is that resonating with now transitioning into year 2, this regime going forward? What are the overall thoughts on this offseason coming forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's buy-in across the board, right? And what came off as maybe a little corny, gooberish, the enthusiasm that Jonathan Gannon put on display, in his opening press conference and a couple of the social media clips that made their way out, you realize that that's authentic. Like that's a guy that actually he loves his job and he wants to be a culture changer and take the Cardinals out of the darkness and into the light. And I think that he's the guy that was for the job, and he's got buy-in across the board, and it's being led by his franchise quarterback that he empowered, and so did general manager Monty Ossenfort. And this, after they hit the reset button, getting rid of their GM and their head coach from the previous regime, and you're starting to see that kind of pay off. In the 8 games that Kyler Murray played last year, he got in a new offense. He did some different things, getting in from under center, out of the shotgun a little bit, and doing some different things technique-wise. And it benefited him. And I think that he got to play within the infrastructure of a real sound offensive system that kind of comes from like the Shanahan, Stefanski philosophies. And it's looking good right now. And I think, you saw a well-coached team that was undermanned last year to get an improved roster this year and is poised, I think, to really kind of make some noise and become relevant again within the NFL landscape.
It kind of piggyback off that. What are, we get so lost in our own niche sometimes here with covering the Bills and don't always, I feel like this offseason, the Cardinals were kind of one of those teams that just fell under the radar for me in terms of like national. And then like, hey, the schedule's up and we got to get ready for the Cardinals. And what were some of like the storylines here, the big ones for Cardinals fans, Cardinals media heading into this year? And where kind of are the expectations for this season at among those same people?
Yeah, I mean, year 2 of a rebuild, but then it's a strange kind of twist on that where often there's not a franchise quarterback in the fold at this point. You're trying to figure out a lot about that guy. And I think they know what they have in Murray. He went 3-5 with a bad roster last year, should have been 4-4 if their place kicker makes 1 or 2 kicks, but it did benefit them in the long run because they stick at 4 and they get to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and fill that X wide receiver position that they desperately lacked last season. And it has a good mix of budding playmakers across the board. But, I think that, coming off back-to-back 4-win seasons, this team wants to start winning some football games. And I think that, as long of a leash as they were given year 1, the expectation to win starts to pop up, and they need to take care of business against what's going to be viewed as lesser football teams that they're going to now be fighting, hopefully show that they're above weight class in, and then maybe win some games that they're not supposed to win, that they're not going to be favored in. I mean, this was a team, guys, going into last year that wasn't favored in any football game, right? There was talk about this roster, being the worst in decades and was going to go winless, and that it was inevitable that they were going to be the winner of the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. And I think that they showed that they scratched and clawed and did everything they could as a coaching staff and found some pieces that they could move forward with, and then built upon those this offseason with the Marvin Harrison Jr. draft and another first round pick on top of that, and a 12-person draft class and some additions in free agency, that with this well-coached team and improved roster that they should be, contending week in and week out. And with that and consistent quarterback play along with that they should be maybe knocking on the door of a postseason appearance.
So before we get into the matchups, it's really funny. I remember making a comment. I don't remember which week it was. I think it was after, it was maybe the Ravens game or something like that. And it was like, holy crap. Like I think my comment was, this team is having the perfect season in like the actual strategic direction of, you're consistently hanging in games. You're playing hard. You're getting like legit good film on the young players, because it's not stupid blowouts. It's not like weird off script stuff that isn't going to translate. You're hanging in these games and giving fans like something to grab onto, but you're still losing all of them. And you're sitting there at 1-7 when it's like, but it's not the same. Like, we remember some of those like Lions and Browns 1-7s, or honestly, probably some former Bills and Cardinals 1-7s in previous years. It wasn't like that. Like, there was a lot of like, holy crap, we almost had them, but they got us again. And you're sitting there at 1-7, but like had a bunch of good stuff to hang on to. It was super weird.
Yeah, it was a testament, I think, to the buy-in to the new coaching staff. You absolutely saw that. And you're right, like players emerged, and like that Ravens game, it was near the end of one of the oddest things ever. Is like they get Joshua Dobbs right before the start of the regular season. He's thrown into the flames as the starting quarterback in the interim for Kyler Murray up until week 9 against the Cleveland Browns, and then he's back week 10. But and Josh Dobbs isn't even on the team anymore at that point, and he was your starting quarterback for 8 weeks. It was insane. And they did some interesting things, but you're right. Like, it was the fan base in a throwaway season had some things that they could actually be proud of and look forward to. And you're right. That's exactly what you want in year 1 of a rebuild, where you tore everything down and prepared it for the following offseason that we just went through. And, I think the momentum's pointing to an even more exciting 2024 campaign.
Absolutely. So let's get into a little bit of the matchup here. We'll talk a little, Bills defense against this Cardinals offense. And I think, people getting ready for fantasy, they're seeing, Marvin Harrison, one of the highest drafted rookie receivers in fantasy history. Expectations are through the roof. where is the fan? Like, it's really hard because, yeah, you guys had that with Larry Fitzgerald. Like, there's
Mhm.
been like, generational receiver prospects coming out, and even like him and Calvin Johnson, and maybe that's a little before this offensive phase of the
Yeah.
NFL, but it doesn't always get, it's not always a Jamar Chase rookie season. It's not always
Mhm.
that record shattering, heck, Anquan Bolden. It's not always that record shattering number.
Mhm.
In a lot of people's minds, he could have 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns, and that's a really good season. And it would almost be disappointing for him if it's
Mhm.
only 1,000 and 6 touchdowns. Like,
Eh,
how high is the bar for what I think a lot of people see as the best receiver that's come out in quite a while?
I mean, I think it's possible, right? But I think it's going to benefit Marvin Harrison Jr. that he doesn't have to put up those numbers in order for them to be an effective offense, right? Because they're going to emphasize the run game, and then I think he's got some good playmakers around him, and Trey McBride at the tight end position, who emerged last year, 80 catches over 800 yards, and Michael Wilson, who I think is going to be a strong wide receiver too in this
We
offense,
loved
and then
Wilson
Dortz.
in the draft that
Yeah,
year.
Wilson's great. He's shined at the Senior Bowl, and he proved the Cardinals right. He just needs to continue to get healthier and healthier, and I think with health will come consistent production from him. So with all that, like the Jamar Chase, the Puka Nacua, the Justin Jefferson 1,400 yards, maybe double digit touchdowns. I don't think it's necessary, but I think he's going to also in his own right be undeniable. Like you're going to see him, and he's going to command the focus and attention of opposing defenses, and he's going to be able to open up. And what he's going to be able to do as a decoy is going to be nearly as important as what he does as kind of the primary playmaker. And it is like, so I'm putting 1,400 yards out of the conversation here, even though I think he's capable of doing that in an offense that has less options. But I think he's more realistic. The money spot's going to be like 1,100 to 1,200 yards and maybe like 7 to 8 touchdowns, which is a great year, guys. I mean,
Amazing. It's an
before
amazing rookie season.
Justin Jefferson, those were like years that came, every half decade, and now it's happening every other year. And I just don't think it, in MHJ's case, that he has to do it in order for them to put up points.
So you brought up a name that, don't get me wrong. Like I'm concerned with Marvin Harrison Jr. on Sunday, but honestly, like I'll take my chances with Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford. Like, hey, they're going to have those kind of matchups all season long. They're going to be playing good receivers. He's one of the good receivers they're going to have to guard. That's just their job. The one that I'm concerned about is losing Matt Milano and playing Trey McBride. Like that one scares the crap out of me. Are we going to do something different with Taron Johnson? Are we going to have him more focused on it? Can he match up with the size? Talk a little bit about a guy that, if you weren't really clued into the second half of last year, especially when Kyler came back, you might have missed how phenomenal Trey McBride was down the year, because he put up his numbers not in literally half the games, but damn close in half the games. Tell the fans a little bit about what he showed last year, especially down the stretch.
Yeah, 55th overall pick out of Colorado State, had an awesome senior season for the Rams there. And in 2023, they drafted him. And then he had to kind of like bide his time behind Zach Ertz. And even Zach Ertz for 5 games last season. And, we saw 12 games of Trey McBride and what he could do, and just absolutely emerged. Even when Dobbs was the quarterback, like he had some big games. And then when Kyler Murray, immediately came back in week 10 with the Atlanta Falcons, 10 catches, 131 yards. And they had said, like, hey, we like this matchup against safety, and we're going to expose it. And they did it down the stretch in a key moment where, Trey McBride came down with a 31-yard reception, and it set him up for the go-ahead score. And that's the confidence that they have, that, Trey McBride is going to be a mismatch for most opposing safeties. And I would imagine that they've got the same mentality going into this year, even with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that's a matchup, whether it's DeMar Hamlin or whether it's, Taron Johnson, is probably the way that they would try to combat that the best way, with an all-pro slot corner. I think that's it's what the Bears did. I think they eventually went to their top corner at that point because they didn't have to worry about the X or Z receiver. They went with Jalen Johnson against Trey McBride and were able to slow him down a little bit. And I think that the mix of Hamlin and Taron Johnson is probably your best bet. and being able not to have some sort of mismatch with Trey McBride in the passing game.
So, is there any truth to the rumors that based on carbon dating, James Conner is the oldest 29-year-old in NFL history? How does a man that beat cancer and
Yeah.
has gone through the wear and tear that he has in his career, you're talking about 1,100 NFL carries, and he still runs like he's trying to embarrass you in front of your parents.
Yeah,
Like,
he
it's
does.
unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, and like head coach Jonathan Gannon calls him the blueprint, right? Just as far as the work he puts in and the way he takes care of himself to get ready each and every Sunday. But then also, like, it's inevitable, right? He just hasn't played a full season his entire career. Maybe that's taken it down because each and every year he's missing about 3 to 4 games. But last year, man, he aged like a fine wine. I mean, he came back after that 4 games IR stint. He looked fresher than he did before that. And he had the career season over 1,000 yards on the ground for the first time, 5 yards per carry. He showed up in the passing game. He just was, he was really kind of the straw that stirred the drink offensively for the Arizona Cardinals. And going into a contract year at 29, I think they're going to run him like an old Toyota, man. They're just going to put mileage on him go in this year, age 29 season.
So one last one here on offense. We've talked
Yeah.
about all the fun and fancy positions. How do you feel about the offensive line? Aaron and I talk all the time in the NFL. People talk about, the Trent Williams and the high end guys. It's a weak link game. Like it's hey, how do you feel your 4th and 5th guy are? I think it was kind of sneaky to get Jonah Williams on a good value. We've talked about Will Hernandez as a free agent option before. It seems like Paris Johnson's been a pretty big hit. How are you feeling about that unit as a whole coming together? Do you think it's where it needs to be, or is it kind of a couple steps in the right direction, but maybe a couple pieces you're still not sure on?
Yeah, we talked to Kyler Murray today. We talked to Paris Johnson Jr., 6th overall pick in 2023, making the switch where he started every snap at right tackle last year while they had DJ Humphries at left tackle. And with the ACL injury, Paris decided, okay, let's start his, role as franchise left tackle this season. And it's his natural position, right? And like the offensive line, it was an underrated group last year, but I think the most consistent on the team. But their strength is in the run game. Like run blocking is what they're geared up to do. And Paris Johnson Jr. is a part of that. Their center Yelder Froholt, who's kind of a journeyman before this, found his position here at center. Will Hernandez went from, what some people would say draft bust with the Giants to a career resurgence here in Arizona. And then Jonah Williams and then Evan Brown, who's a guy who was an addition as a free agent.
Seattle.
Yeah, sneaky guy, strong, right? Knows the system. He's got versatility on the interior of the offensive line. But these guys are going to set themselves up for success as far as establishing the run, right? And then where I think they struggle in pass pro, what they can get going on can kind of take the pressure off of them with what James Conner can do, setting them up 2nd and 3rd and manageable. And that's what they want to do. But like if you're saying, hey, you can make them one-dimensional and you got to have Kyler Murray drop back the entire second half, it's going to look ugly. But if they've got a good balance, and it's often with any offense, right, then they're going to be able to kind of establish the run and then build off of that with the passing game and Kyler Murray's arm talent.
All right, let's get over to the defensive side of the ball. So every year, just so you know, Greg and I rotate this back and forth every week, and we're deciding on who gets it, which side of the ball here this week. And he kind of jumped in. And he was like, I'll take offense to start off. And I think he thought he was having all the fun this week because the Cards offense, there's a lot of fun things to talk about, right? And if you look at the Cardinals defense last year, not looking great, but this actually, it was awesome for me. It gave me a chance to talk about Budda Baker and watch Budda Baker all week. So little does Greg know this is actually a big benefit to me. But before we get into Budda, which I'm excited to talk with you about, kind of an overall picture on this defense, because it wasn't awesome last year, right? Like if you had any of that hope that you were talking about earlier on of the rebuild and things like that, it seemed from my perspective of the Cardinals that a lot of this was based on the offensive side of the ball once Murray was back, and starting to see some of that clicking and modern NFL type offense. And I think you see the vision and the philosophy of what Gannon wants to do on defense, but the pieces haven't all seemed to show up yet. Is that a fair assessment for the
Yeah,
defensive
no,
side of the ball?
definitely not an unfair assessment at all. And I think you have to look to the 2021 Eagles, where they were really trying to find their way and identity as an offensive team with Jalen Hurts kind of in his first full year as quarterback. And Gannon kind of took on, he's like, hey, you guys figure that out. You invest in that side of the football, and then I'll handle the defense. And they started to kind of find their way on that side of the football at the end of that season. But they did have even some more proven commodities on that. So they might be a little step behind that. But I think there's confidence, obviously, from a scheme standpoint with Gannon and a young whiz as far as defensive coordinator Nick Rollis, who just turned 31, that they'll be able to figure it out. But there's a lot of new pieces on this defense and a lot of guys that you're just basing off projections, and you don't know what's going to happen at the NFL level.
Yeah, and I think, to get right into my favorite part of this defense, it all starts and ends with Budda Baker and what he's able to do. And I was trying to find a way to almost describe, if you're an OC, I talk about this all the time, if you're preparing for a team, Josh Allen needs to know where Budda Baker, the way they use him and line him up all over the field and in that robber role a little bit and just kind of hanging out in the middle of the field, waiting for you to make the wrong play. He's just always around the ball. The word that I have circled next to his name is unavoidable. Teams try to go away from players like that. You're playing a Micah Parsons. There's things you can do to offset the effect that Micah Parsons can have on the game. But I feel like with a safety, especially that middle safety type thing that the Cardinals want to do with his skill set and is such a safety centric defense, that it almost becomes unavoidable. He's at the ball everywhere you go. He kind of makes this tick. Is he what drags this defense along right now? Is sort of the star that drags it?
Yeah, him and middle linebacker Kazir White, who's done a good job. Second season out of Philadelphia, was part of that Super Bowl team, and they didn't have a lot of time together. But the second and third levels of the defense, they were able to steady that. White's the guy who's calling the defense. He's the green dot on that side of the football. But yeah, you're right. Budda Baker he's always flying around. He knows where he needs to be. The only thing I think you could say about him, the only criticism, doesn't take the ball away as much as you want. But can he set himself up?
He's always right there, though.
Yeah, he's always right there, right? But can maybe him being the vocal point, can he set other guys up to get their hands on the football? Some of these additions, a lot of the draft picks that they got had some pretty gaudy, interception statistics at the collegiate level. And Max Melton from Rutgers and Rabbit Taylor Demerson out of Texas Tech. So they've got to, I think that's what they're going to have to try to do as they find their way defensively. But absolutely, Budda Baker's been, that steady player for them for so long since getting them out of Washington in 2017 and continues to be that. So on those levels of the defense, they absolutely have that. Up front, I think that's the biggest question for the Cardinals.
Yeah, well, let's transition to up front because that was where I was going next. Is obviously Josh Allen's a kind of a unicorn, right? In terms of you want to be able to get pressure on him, right? Every single quarterback struggles with pressure, but you got to be careful in how you bring that pressure. And we know last year Cardinals struggled. That was probably one of the areas they struggled the most, was on that defensive line in terms of both the run game and the pass game, and not being able to generate sacks and not be able to really stop the run in the trenches. How do you see them with a bit of a new look to this defense, being able to generate some pressure on Josh while also maintaining your lanes and not doing anything too crazy to put yourself in a jeopardizing position with a guy that can throw the ball pretty much everywhere?
For sure. Give up the least amount of sacks in the NFL last year. They kept Josh Allen's jersey relatively clean. It's especially with the unit that's coming back. They return basically the status quo as far as their edge rush group that produced one sack over the last 6 games of the season. But you also have to understand that the defensive line was probably the worst position group in the NFL last year. They just had no talent. And there was an emphasis on upgrading that, just the talent floor. They didn't go out and get a Christian Wilkins or anything, but they got Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols, and then they drafted Darius Robinson to couple with some guys that they identified in Dante Stills and Roy Lopez that they could make a rotation out of this year. And I think that rotation is a lot better spot. And you'll see a vast improvement as far as slowing down the run. I think that's where you're going to see a jump this year. And then could those edge rushers that were pretty impactful, weeks 1 through 11, getting some TFLs and some pressures on quarterbacks, maybe return to that. but it's going to have to come from Dennis Gardeck, Zaven Collins, who are not household names coming off the edge. And
They're
Xavier
nice
Thomas,
rotational pieces, though. Those are
nice
nice rotational
rotationals
players
for
yeah.
sure. And the guy that I think they were expecting to see a jump in Zach production, BJ Ojolari, is lost for the season. So already kind of behind the 8 ball there. And obviously in a rebuild, you can't fix everything all at once. But the edge rush position, I think, is the biggest concern. Going from year 1 to year 2 here under Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah, and another one that I think that doesn't get really actually talked about enough when teams are playing against the Bills, because it always is like Josh Allen, right? So it's Josh Allen centric and how you slow down the Bills in their passing game. But I'm looking at this game and seeing, I actually think this might be a bit both sides of the ball, very run heavy game. I think we're seeing the NFL transition more to that. Actually, you were talking about the offensive side of the ball. I think both the Bills and Cardinals are kind of on that front wave of going heavier, 12, 13 personnel, and trying to establish a more physical game. And so with the Bills, I think that this plays well against this Cardinals defense as far as we don't know, right, who they are. We're only based on last year and what we're projecting. But the run game wasn't great last year. What have they done over the offseason? You talk about adding Nichols, adding Justin Jones, and is that enough to shore up, to allow these linebackers to play a little more free, to not let the run game leak out and be such a problem for the Cardinals this year?
Yeah. I mean, there was just second halves last year where the Cardinals were pesky, and then more talented rosters, especially up front on the offensive side of the football, were able to impose their will, right? And I don't know if they completely fix it, but I think that they're going to be able to not just give up chunk yardage on first and second down, to where I think Nichols and Jones, they'll start to fill some of those gaps, and it won't just be as easy. And then games, that's when they started to get out of hand. So I think that they were able to raise the talent floor there a little bit more, and guys like Budda Baker who fly around, and Kazir White who fly around, they'll have more success and won't just have to be out of necessity making tackles to stop guys from getting, big explosives in the run game.
So for everybody listening here, if you haven't followed Bo already, you can follow him at Bo Brack on Twitter. I'm bringing up his tweet here. Shared the injury report earlier. I think, fortunately, it seems like
pretty
both
clean.
teams are pretty clean. Obviously, some of the dings for Arizona are unfortunately a little bit more serious. You mentioned losing Ojolari and first round pick Darius Robinson. That one is that seeming like it's going to be more like along the minimum of the 4 games, or is it still unknown how serious that could be?
I think closer to the former, the minimum, right? I think he'll probably miss the 4 and then be ready to come back at the end of September, which is good. You get to see the 27th overall pick, versatile piece on the defensive line, and help supplement, the pass rush, which they desperately need. But looking at this one, a couple rookies on the offensive side of the football who were just luxuries. Like Xavier Weaver was a nice surprise as an undrafted free agent out of Colorado. Might have played a role in the return game, unlikely, and probably didn't have I don't know if he would have even been active on game day. Tip Ryman's an interesting case, guys, where he's 82nd overall pick. He's an absolute just kind of luxury because he is a run blocking tight end. And I think once you started to get into those 12 personnel packages, maybe 13 personnel closer to the red zone, he was the consensus best blocking tight end in the draft, and he could have helped out there. I think there's still a chance that, he was out there Monday, he was out there today, he was limited with the ankle. Should be fun to watch, but he's not going to be, somebody in the passing attack that you're going to have to keep tabs on in number 87.
So on the Bills side, I do think that, Solomon's a pretty easy one. He's probably a borderline, like you said, with Weaver. He might have been a game day inactive if healthy anyways. Trubisky's maybe a little bit sketchy. There's a chance that we have to call up Mike White as a practice squad elevation for the backup quarterback. And then it was really nice to see Cole Bishop's one that there's a real possibility he might have been the starting safety week 1 if he hadn't got dinged up, but wasn't able to stay healthy. He's back there now. Hopefully that lets him contribute and be a part of it. And Curtis Samuel, it certainly seems like, was one that, Joe Brady genuinely advocated for to get him back. His best season was with him in Carolina, and it seems like that's going to have an opportunity here. So we'll see where that goes. But it seems like both teams are coming in reasonably clean, other than, unfortunately, both of us losing Matt Milano, losing BJ Ojolari, some of the pieces that are more definitive that weren't in question here. Everybody else is about ready to be there. So without further ado, everybody that we bring on, we try to kind of put on the spot here and be able to ask. We are represented as a network by the folks over at BetUS. So I'll bring up some of the numbers here of what they think the game is going to turn out to be like. What do you expect to see this weekend? We've had a lot
that
of
line came down a little, wasn't it? 6.5.
It did.
Yeah, we've seen it floating around. I saw 5.5 at one point. It went to 6.5. I've seen it floating around. We'll see as it gets closer to game time.
Is that the biggest line of the week for week one? Week one lines are a little tight,
Cincy, right? Maybe Seattle, New England, or whichever one that one is. There might be one that's
bigger.
a higher.
Seattle and Denver is 6 too.
Seattle, Denver, and then Cincinnati, New England. I think those are the other ones that are in the running
this range
for the highest. I think that New England, Cincinnati is at 8.5. That's the only one that's higher. And then Denver, Seattle is right there with it at about 6. So, Bo, we've seen some confident Cardinals fans, on social media. Yeah. I think there's reason to feel good. I do think the over-under is maybe an exciting bet. There could be some points to be scored here. What do you expect to see in this game? What's your score prediction of what we'll see on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, it's as much as I think that the Bills could be at their most vulnerable relative to the 2024 season, like Cardinals still have to prove it, right? And I think that they have a lot to prove this season. Can they overcome being a 6-point underdog on the road week one against a team with high expectations in 2024? Like, I don't know if I'm willing to go out on a limb this early, but I think that they're going to be able to cover this 6 points. Am I bold enough to go with the money line here plus 225? Even though I haven't made my prediction on my own show, I don't think that this is the week that they go and shock the world, but there's an opportunity to do so. So I got the Cardinals covering, but still losing week one against the Bills.
Okay. I think that's fair, and I don't think that's unreasonable of what we could see here. If again, with Matt Milano in tow, if we had the safety units healthy, there are some questions here, and there are some points to be scored. I think on this Bills defense early on. I think that the one advantage that I could see is that Bills D line against the Cardinals offensive line passing early on. But like you said, if they're able to get some balance going in the run game, you get the play action working, you're able to take some shots, all of a sudden some big plays can happen. So this is great, man. It's great to have you on for the first time here. It was fun to be able to talk back and forth. Appreciate your availability. Let the folks know what else you guys have going on over there and what to expect from you next.
Yeah, a couple more days of practice before the actual thing happens. I can't get here soon enough, but follow me at Bo Brack on Twitter for all the updates coming from the Cards side of things going into this week one showdown. And then we've got a big preview show on Friday, but we're talking about the Cards every day. PHNX Sports. Check it out on YouTube or wherever you find podcasts.
Awesome. Appreciate your time. This was great. And hopefully we'll have a reason to talk again soon.
Yeah.
Sounds good, guys.
Have a nice, healthy week one.
Yeah.
Likewise, guys.
Appreciate
Take care,
it, man.
So it's fun. It's good to be able to have Bo on and to be able to talk through. And I think that was a very kind of realistic approach here. Nervous Mafia is always here early on. We've had a lot of, different challenges that go through. Let's do 2 quick questions before we switch over into our, reason to help people pump the brakes a little bit. What's the matchup that you feel the best about, and what's the matchup that you're the most concerned with? Could be position unit or it could be individual player.
So this will kind of go into some of my overall thoughts about the matchup. I don't know if I'm answering the question correctly here, but I think the biggest advantage for the Cardinals is how many offensive weapons they have and how they can deploy those weapons, right? Like I think we go up against teams where you see a spread like this and you see their last year's lack of success and you think like, man, this team must be like, you see the name Marvin Harrison Jr. It's like, okay, well, we'll just stop him. It's like, okay, good luck. But then they got McBride, like we talked about with the tight ends and what they do with tight ends, and James Conner's like you said, like he's just forever productive. It's like he's going to have 1,000 yards forever until he retires. And so he's always there and productive. And then Kyler Murray in himself is just such a unique weapon in so many ways. We know the Bills have struggled with lesser quarterbacks that are slippery and extend plays and do some of that stuff. Like he's a better quarterback. And I think some people maybe forget how talented he is, because he has been a little bit lost in the shuffle in Arizona. And then he had the injury, and that organization's kind of been a bit of a dysfunctional one since he's been there. But that still doesn't take away the talent and why he was a number 1 pick overall. So I think that is a favoring to them. But I think for the Bills, it's the trenches. I think we talk a lot about where games are won, and there's been a lot of talk this week about what can the Cardinals do to the linebackers and the safeties and all these things of the Bills. And I do think there's some advantages there. And can the Cardinals win the game with those advantages? Certainly. But more times than not, I think games are won in the trenches. And I think the Bills win on both sides of the ball. And I think that'll come to fruition as the game gets into the third, fourth quarter. Like, Cardinals might come out and punch you, but I think the winning in the trenches is what's going to make the difference overall in this game.
100%. And Carl asking here, who will be the stars for each side? I do think we're not shutting this team out. I gotta warn you guys. Like, I am not expecting, like, I think we can win. I think we can win by a decent amount. I'll give my score prediction here in a little bit, but I do think that we can win this game, not comfortably, but I think we could cover in this setup. We're not shutting them out. We have too many holes on defense. We have too many new pieces being put together. I don't feel like our communication is going to be, locked in week 1 for the first time they play together, especially when this group had multiple different groups talking together, through the preseason and through training camp. Like, even the group that's going to show up week 1 didn't get all that many reps together in the spots that they were in. So, I just think there's a lot of opportunity there. So I think Trey McBride is a great call. And, we've seen that in the past, Josh Allen has put the ball at risk. Like, he has put the ball, at risk in some of these spots. And, we're going to learn what he's ready for and what the evolution and maturation has been as he steps in here. He's talked about a lot of those things. He's talked about the work that he's put in. He's talked about him getting a personal chef and eating healthier. He's talking about, all the things that he's done with Joe Brady to get ready for this season, the everybody eats mentality, how he's got to be ready to read the defense and get the ball to the right player. If he's done that, well, then everybody else is in some pretty big trouble being able to be in that kind of position. So if he does put the ball at risk, Budda Baker could be that guy. And I think Kazir White is a guy that I don't think a lot of fans know about. Budda Baker's been a big enough name for a bit here, but Bo brought up Kazir White in that he is a playmaking linebacker as well, who can, if Josh puts the ball at risk in a spot where he, makes it where, he could have a big game as well. So Budda Baker's the name that more people are going to know, because your White is one as well that could be there. But I think Aaron was spot on that from a matchup standpoint on both sides of the ball. I like the Bills defensive line over the Arizona offensive line, and I like the Bills offensive line against the Arizona defensive line. I think this could be a really big James Cook game. I think that we could see James Cook and Ray Davis both having nice games. I still think we're going to pass the ball on them, but they're linebackers and safeties, and that's the strength of their team. You want to run the ball at them. I think we can still pass the ball just fine. But I do think this is going to be a game with a lot of screens, with a lot of, quick jet motion, a lot of run game, and a lot of play action. This isn't a game where I want to go just 5 wide and pass it at them the whole time. We can beat them up front, and I want to do that. I want to beat them up front. And I think that also comes into play when you look at things like the over-under and the spread here. People are expecting a shootout back and forth, Josh Allen versus Kyler Murray, and that would be fun, and it is possible. But I actually think we might run the ball enough. And, Padden here talking about, I do think this would be a 12 personnel game. I think we see a lot of Dawson Knox, and I think that I think we're gonna see some Reggie Gilliam. I think we're gonna see some Quentin Morris. I think we're gonna see
some like 13 personnel.
Oh yeah,
bigger packages.
Heck, was it 32? Is 32 a thing?
Maybe.
Can you do that? Yeah, 32. Where you have we'll have Gilliam out there, 3 tight ends, a fullback, and a running back. Like, I think that we're gonna see the whole deal. I bet you we see jumbo sets. I think Alec Anderson's going to be the guy this year. I think Alec Anderson will be the jumbo offensive lineman. I guarantee we see some of those jumbo sets. And anytime you're doing that and you're running the ball more, the clock is running. It's usually longer drives. It's usually fewer possessions. That probably means it's more likely to go under than people think. And I think that's where we'll come into play here. So I am excited for this. And as Lauren said, I'm really glad that you didn't Irish goodbye me there. But I do think that we will see those trench matchups. It's funny, the skill positions, the Cardinals probably match up okay with the Bills. Like, I don't think we have a huge advantage when you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., James Conner, Trey McBride. Like, those are good players that I don't feel awesome
I like
about
our
stopping.
What I will say is, I think I agree with you on skill positions, but I like our defenders on like Rasul Douglas, Benford, Aaron Johnson. Like, I think we have more to stop what they have than they have to stop what the Bills.
100%. And I think Jason here talks about, I respect Murray, but to me, he is a Doug Flutie comp. He deserves respect. We were giving it too much respect. All I hear about is fear of him. He is a winning quarterback, talented but limited. I'm probably a notch higher than that. That might not be far off from where you are with him. I know that you're kind of middle of the road with him. I think he can be a winning player. Mm-hmm. And I think that he's been put in, we talk about the trenches and the different pieces here. Like, he hasn't been put on very good football teams, and he's made plays. He's won his entire life. He's the winningest quarterback in Texas high school football history. Texas high school football is as serious as it gets. He's won everywhere that he's gone. I think he can be a winning quarterback, and I think that this season is going to show if that's the case or not. But I agree, he hasn't been consistent enough. I think that consistency has been more from an injury standpoint, less so his skill set or ability. I think with a good, talented team, and especially if they can continue to build this offensive line around him, if they hit if Paris Johnson Jr. looks like what I think he is, which looks like a franchise left tackle, and they start to hit on some of these other pieces and add some other stuff around them. They also made a third-round draft pick at the guard position that maybe he comes in for Evan Brown. They have some other pieces. I'm sure they'll draft another offensive lineman next year. I think they have a chance to really build this up, and I think he can be a winning quarterback, but I think it's a very reasonable to be skeptical. I don't know that I've seen a lot of people talking about fearing him. Nobody should be fearing him. He's not a quarterback to be feared, but he is a quarterback to be taken seriously because he's made big plays and he's done those things. The Hail Murray game, like, he kept them in that game to be in a position to have a Hail Murray at the end of the game. He was a big piece of why that took place.
Yeah, the best thing they did for him and for him to be able to cap out his success in the NFL was get a run game going over there, and for them to be able to lean on that run game. What's going to make him super dangerous is play action. And like, the way I see it, we talked about them being able to score points. Like, I'm as high on the Bills safeties in terms of the depth of the four guys that they have that can play. But I don't care who it is, whether it's Mike Edwards, DeMar Hamlin being in there, who is going to be the one that's going to be in there. The way that these guys play, and I think the Bills use safeties, is going to be quite tested, I think, in a game like this, where they're coming up along the line. And if you watch the film room with Eric and Anthony, some of those leaks, just stuff like, it looks exactly like all their designed runs and all their run plays. So they're going to hit you with 2-3 runs with Connors, and you're going to come up in that box a little bit, and your tight end or your linebacker or safety is going to come up in towards the line of scrimmage. They play it pretty aggressively anyway. If you remember, like, DeMar Hamlin's strength is playing the run along the line of scrimmage, run blitzing, things like that. We saw Eric talk about some of the more aggressive safety play that he saw in camp. You get too aggressive, Trey McBride leaks out. Like, those are the ways that is going to spoil a game for the Buffalo.
Variance goes both directions. Like, it's cool when you get the sack, the TFL, the strip sack fumble, you bring the safety blitz. But the downside of that is also that, if you miss, it's usually a big play the other way.
And this is an offense that's going to want to test that aggression, right? And I think we're going to do the same thing on their side, right? We're going to your point with some of that run stuff and the gadget stuff, is like, challenge their aggression and see if they over pursue for some of the eye candy you give them and go the other way with a Kincaid leaking out type of play, and see if you can't get your matchup in the same way. So, I think that giving him a run game and allowing him to be, playoff play action. You alluded to it where I thought he was. I called him like a souped up Baker Mayfield, and that's not a diss. I actually like Baker Mayfield quite good. Like, I think there's levels of quarterbacks, and I think Kyler Murray probably falls on the higher end of that level of you can win with this guy. It's like Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, like some of these guys that they are starters. They're starter caliber guys, but they're not the Josh Allens, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jacksons. Like, can Kyler be that? If he can stay healthy and get Maserati Marv going, maybe. I think that it's still to be told for him, but right now I think he's smack dab sort of in the middle there right now in terms of like he's a good starter that you can win with, but he doesn't win you games.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, and like I said, I'm a little higher on his potential and
Same, yeah.
his what his upside can be, but that's still theoretical because he hasn't been consistent. And
That's tough, man. Can you imagine being this far
Yeah.
in to like having picked a number one QB and you still don't know, like, like, hey,
Yeah, you think, hey, maybe.
like maybe this guy could be a player. You just don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know who he is.
Yeah, correct. And I will say the one thing I didn't want to keep going further with Bo and be respectful of his time, but there is a difference. And I'll say like Kyler and Lamar are two of the guys that weirdly their athleticism and scrambling doesn't translate in the way that like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes does, where consistently every season Josh and Mahomes have the lowest sack percentage out of the percent of pressure. So it's not like an offensive line stat. Even looking
Right.
at, hey, the amount of pressures they get, the fewest percentage of that turns into a sack. Whereas you would think Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson would both be equally as good at that, if not honestly, maybe better at that. They're both quicker than Josh Allen. Like they should be able to like run around and evade those things, maybe even better than Josh. But it seems like whatever that innate skill or sense of where the guys are coming from, or just that little hesitation to be able to do it, or some of it, I think I used to see this with Michael Vick, that because you've been able to run away from everyone your entire life, you just have like a supreme confidence that you're always going to be able to do it. And like sometimes you can't. Like sometimes those guys are awesome too. And it's weird that Murray isn't better at evading sacks when like the highlights you think of him like scrambling around looking at those things. It's a little weird that you would think he'd be better at that. And I will say, sadly, that's one of the stickier stats. Like that is one of those things that's kind of an innate ability. Guys don't normally improve. And that it's one of the most stickiest ones translating from college to the pros. If a guy takes a lot of sacks in college, they normally struggle with that. There's no better example than Justin Fields. Like that's the reason Justin Fields can't solidify a starting quarterback spot is he can't stop taking sacks, bad sacks, impactful, hurtful sacks. And, I'm going to go down even further down the rabbit hole. When people talk about the turnovers for Josh Allen, and people like Uber and others will do the statistical analysis and share, it's the overall negative plays that is way more even, because you talk about sacks, fumbles, interceptions, the impact of the interceptions. A lot of Josh's interceptions are on like 3rd and 16 plays where, hey, an incompletion and interception is about the same thing, because Josh's downfield passes are usually maybe better than some of San Martin's, shank punts. It's not a loss of EPA. You were going to turn the ball over anyways. And yes, he needs to take a shot there. And some of them are bad. Some of them are unacceptable. First down, second down, hey, live to fight another day things. But he's normally really good in the red zone and those different things. That's another piece of it. The overall package of negative plays is way lower from Josh Allen. And a guy like Kyler Murray, even when I am hopeful and optimistic about the potential for him, at some point, you got to put that together.
Yeah. You ready to pump some
so,
brakes?
Yeah, let's share this. And you had this idea as we were kind of prepping for the show. And there's a lot of different things that you can pump the brakes about, but you had a good idea of maybe a little higher level idea of what we should encourage people to pump the brakes on.
Yeah, this is it's such a juxtaposition because I couldn't be more excited about football than I am, right? Like the weather's good in Western New York. It's starting to feel a little fall in the morning. You got that like you're drinking coffee, you're listening to Bills talk, you're getting ready for a game. I'm doing a preview show with you. Like I couldn't be more jacked up for football than going into the game week 1. But every single year, I got to pump the brakes and pull back. And I want this is more of a warning, pump the brakes, Greg. It's not like right now. Don't pump the brakes right now. Go full crazy right now. But on Thursday night, whatever night, all during week 1, just pump the brakes on whatever you think about football. Don't tweet it. Don't have a reaction. Just savor football, enjoy it. Week 1's so wacky. So many weird things happen year in and year out. Like I won't be surprised if the Bills come out and just like they're not going to get shut out or anything, but they could come out and just have a bad game. This could set up real bad for a big upset, and it wouldn't mean anything. It would literally mean nothing. Somebody's going to get upset big time here week 1. Somebody's going to trick all the Nate Gearys. I love you, Nate. All my friends like Nate Gearys of the world to thinking like, oh, we slept on this team. They're going to be way better than they are. It happens every year. People start firing off tweets. They get way too crazy about whatever is going on week 1. And then like the league kind of settles into October and none of that reaction mattered. So just pump the brakes. Enjoy week 1. There doesn't have to be reactions with everything. Just enjoy the first week of the season. We don't know these teams yet. There's so much unknown. It's going to be wacky. Just enjoy that. Embrace it.
Yeah, we've had some of the wildest results of the season happen in week 1 all the time. Not every single season, but plenty of examples where week 1 is a liar. Week 1 is a liar. It just is. It is not an indication of the team in either direction. We've had a complete stinker against the Steelers. We had last year against the Jets.
Terrible.
The Bills, won the division and won a playoff game both of those seasons. It's not the indicator that people want it to be. It would be awesome if we come out and just shellac the Cardinals, but that also isn't a reality of that. Doesn't mean that, oh, we're an untouchable juggernaut that we're going to destroy everybody. Like it's not as meaningful as people want it to be. This is a long season. It is a marathon, not a sprint. The Chiefs looked really bad, like 6, 7, 8 games into last season, including some ugly starts and some things that are there.
We didn't see
It
good
matters
football
how
until November.
Correct.
Like,
So just enjoy this. Don't let this take away from your fun and excitement. Football's back. You deserve to be excited.
Correct.
But just temper the meaning of the result of what happened Sunday. It's one game.
It's health. Health is the only thing that matters coming out of this game, ultimately.
They're going to play all 17 games no matter what happens on Sunday. There's going to be 16 more after that one, no matter what. I think there's going to be playoff games after that as well. But we'll go through there. Justin, I have no idea what you were watching last year. 7, 8 games into the season last year, the Chiefs were bad. Like people were debating if they were going to make the playoffs. They were off to their worst season they had this entire Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes run. They were a bad team last year. Like when they lost to the Raiders, and being in that kind of position when they dropped to 8-5 and people were questioning like, hey, is this going to be the same thing? They were 9-6 after the loss to the Raiders at that point. Like there were a lot of questions about this team. And then they got hot and they went on their run and they won a Super Bowl. Pretending that they were some untouchable juggernaut just means you didn't watch football last year. Straight up.
Yeah. Or recency bias. And actually, while we're in here and we're pumping brakes and stuff, this can lead to a point that I was going to talk about, the overall point of the game and sort of like the vibe that I'm seeing around this game of like, yes, it's week 1 and we should pump the brakes. And the Cardinals very much could upset the Bills. And I think the line's a little aggressive at 6 in week 1. But the fact of the matter also still remains, and historical precedence doesn't necessarily matter. Like what the Bills did last year isn't indicative of what they're going to be this year. But we know who the Cardinals have been for a few years. And I think people forget who the Buffalo Bills have been for the last few years. And maybe we need to pump the brakes on people. Maybe it's complacency in that they've been so good for 4 or 5 years that we've just taken it for granted. I think maybe the national media has taken the Bills for granted and how they've been able to be this good. But I love DVOA, so I went kind of back through some of their standings in DVOA, and in 2020 they were 4th on offense, 11th on defense, 3rd overall. 2021 9th on offense, 1st on defense, 2nd overall. 2022 2nd on offense, 2nd on defense, 1st overall. 2023 3rd on offense, 12th on defense, 3rd overall. This is a team that consistently puts out top 10 units on both sides of the ball. If they're not on defense, it's right on the outside of the top 10, and they've been 3rd, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in overall DVA over the last 4 years. Like, I do think we forget a little bit. Like, yeah, they lost Diggs, but is Diggs the difference of them being 3rd overall in DVOA or 5th overall in DVOA? Like, the drop off isn't going to be as significant as people think. And I think people forgot maybe a little bit who the Buffalo Bills are. Like, they're still led by Josh Allen. They're still coached by Sean McDermott. So I'll pump up the brakes a little bit, even more on other people. We turned this into 2 segments, Greg. Look at that.
I like it. That's kind of that's the kind of show host we are, and that's what we do for our friends at William & Tar Law Offices. They're a fantastic sponsor. They've been a great partner for us, and we're excited. We're going to be hosting none other than Mr. Bill himself. William & Tar is joining us next Wednesday night. He's going to the home opener this week. He, is going to give us his experience there, give us his prediction for the season, all the different things that go into this game and the partnership and the fun. Where I'm going to ask him like how his social media team gets him to do the crazy things they get him to do, because they're awesome, and he's an insanely good sport at all the fun stuff that they get him to do. But I am very, very excited to talk to him, and he's going to be joining us live here next Wednesday night.
Yeah, I can't wait. That's going to be a lot of fun. And this is actually going to be a whole fun week here coming up, Greg, because I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but it is going to be a quick turnaround. And I think that's probably where people feel like this is a big time opportunity for a trap game. I don't think the Bills will sleep on the Cardinals or anything, but I think Bills fans are probably looking a little bit ahead here to that week 2 matchup with such a quick turnaround. And if you are looking forward to the week 2 matchup, Greg, you can come talk. You're not gonna be able to talk to Greg, but you might be able to come talk to me and Anthony Prohaska and even Pat Moran. We're gonna be down here at the Buffalo versus Miami Community Watch Party. Our friends at Leftern, you might remember them, are kind of getting together and throwing a little bit of a fun party here. This is going to be at the Richardson, which I don't know if everybody knows. It's they've redone it here. The Richardson Hotel is right on Forest Avenue in Buffalo. There's going to be outside food and beverage. Admission is free for everyone. All ages are welcome. This is a family-friendly event. There is going to be parking all throughout Elmwood and the campus area. There's going to be giant screens, vendors, food and beverage tents. Again, very family friendly, tons of family activities, music. They're going to have music in between where the commercials are going, pregame, postgame. Obviously, there's going to be the real reason to go, which is live podcasts. Your boy here, my friend Anthony Prohaska, and I said Pat Moran, all going to be there doing some live pregame show. And puppies. Who doesn't like even Bruce Nolan might show. You might get a Bruce Nolan sighting with puppies being there. Yes, you read that right. A truck full of adorable puppies to play with. Like, if that doesn't get you out doing something, I don't know what will. There's going to be raffles, special surprises, and more. You're going to want to come watch party, the community watch party at the Richardson Hotel. That's going to be next Thursday. Again, even if you just come down for a little bit, check out what's going on and get back home for the game, that's fine too. You just want to be a part of this. And again, we're going to be there potting for our first post game or our second post game show, but our first primetime post game show, late nights for us.
Yeah. So at least we get to start with the 1 o'clock one. So one last question here from Carl before we do our score prediction. It does play a factor in my score prediction.
Mm-hmm.
His biggest worry is Tyler Bass. How confident are you going into the season?
How am I in confidence in Tyler Bass? Yeah, this one's an interesting one for me of I've been framing the question to people of what does he have to do to get the confidence back? Because I don't think anyone has a high level of confidence. I know right now, even dating back to last year in the kick in the playoff game, I don't feel a high level of confidence when he's out there for a kick. Maybe some of the easier stuff that I would expect him, like a couple 30-yarders or something. But once he gets into that 50-yard range or the game on the line range, like, no, the confidence is low right now. I don't have a number for it. But I'm trying to figure out what's he got to do. Like, is there anything in this regular season that he can do to really earn my confidence back? Or is it going to have to come with him like solidifying a game to get into the play, like some big situation where he really, we talked about this last year, Greg. It's crazy how much things have changed in 12 months. Cause there was a point in the season where we were like, this guy's not getting the respect he deserves. He's one of the best kickers in the NFL over this period of time. He just needs the one big kick that people remember, so people will start talking about him. But boy, has it gone the opposite way over like 6 to 8 months. And now I don't know that anybody in Bills Mafia feels confident that he will get that kick that we were talking about.
Yeah. Anybody who tells you they're confident is lying. They're not. No one could possibly be confident right now. The good news is that's a very fickle thing, and it can change pretty quickly. I actually was feeling decently good because he had actually made all the kicks in the games. But then that story came out about his rough stretch a couple days in a row in practice. Then he missed one in the game, the 51-yarder in the game, and it's a 51-yarder, so
Yeah, sure.
okay, but he shanked it pretty good. So it's a results-based business. I don't need you to be perfect, but in today's NFL, I need you to be 85% plus. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. I need you to make the kicks. So I'm concerned, just like you are, Carl. I'm concerned too. And I if I told you
Hope is the only plan, Greg. Hope is the only plan.
You hear me all the time. Hope is not a plan. Well, guess what? Our only plan is to hope he gets better. We can't get out of his contract. There's nothing we could do. Our only hope is, hey, I hope he gets better. That's it. That's all there is. Now, maybe we move on next year if things don't go well, but we have to remember, even really good kickers have had an off season. Like that happens on occasion. He could bounce back and be totally fine. Sadly, it would be lying to tell you that it's not impossible for him to have a Chuck Knobloch or one of those things where he just loses it. And that sadly, the yips are a very real thing. That is a very lonely, isolated position. And that when you're in that spot, you can feel very alone, and that it's a very mental.
It's a majority mental position.
It's a majority mental thing. You know this better than I do, but you've seen that with golfers too, where like, hey, when you lose it, sometimes it's just gone, and like you can't get out of your own head at that level, at that ultimate level, where like, hey, once you kind of get into your own head, it's tough in that spot. So we would be lying to say that that's not a possibility here. But I also think people have gone to such a degree that they believe that's the only outcome here, and that's wrong too. One of the outcomes, or one of the potential options in the range of outcomes, is that he has a really good season, and it's totally fine. I think the most likely is that he's pretty good again, and not super consistent, not like, deadlock, automatic every single time, but that he's probably like an 80% kicker, and that he probably, makes, whatever that percentage works out to, that he's somebody who is going to make 4 out of every 5 kicks, and that's pretty good.
I think that's something people forget,
but he's okay.
I think that's something people forget too when they talk about the plan of like, well, let's just get out of that contract. And it's like, okay, and then what?
Yeah.
Like, who are you bringing in that is actually going to be better? Like, maybe it'll make your feelings feel better, and maybe they won't miss the big kick you think Tyler Bass is going to. But like overall, over the aggregate, he's probably going to be just as good or better than whoever you grab.
The guys readily available on the street are also 80% kickers. Like Justin Tucker and Harrison Butker, those guys are not readily just walking the street readily available. Maybe there's, maybe the Lions hit on that XFL guy, Jake Bates. Like sometimes those things happen, but people are assuming that he's just automatic. Like that's just not the way it works. So our best shot is just to hope he gets better. That's it. It's
crazy how fickle though. Like I don't think we were being crazy over the top Homer fans in our excitement about Bass at one point, and in saying like, hey, this guy just needs like a big game winner, a 50 60-something yard game winner to start getting talked about more. And it was maybe not a Tucker or a Bucker, but in that, like, hey, this is a really good kicker in Buffalo. And then honestly, like, is 6 months made all the difference in the world.
2 years in a row, 87%, 87%, like 28 to 32, 27 to 31. Like
That's good kicking.
Those are good. That's a good season.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden last year missed 5 times, and obviously in the playoffs missing like critical kicks, missing important ones, not feeling confident. And unfortunately for him, a lot of it was even the makes. There were an awful lot of like, like where they just squeak through. So even out of those only 5 misses, but there was an awful lot of them that were like back.
I got a question for you. Who has less confidence from the fans? Tyler Bass's leg or James Cook's hands?
The answer is Tyler Bass.
Yeah.
Every
time I talk about James Cook, dude, those mentions,
the
mentions are crazy. If I talk about Cook, the drops he just gets killed on the internet over drops.
There's at least enough people that will come around to defend James Cook.
Sure.
I don't know if anybody's defending Tyler Bass right now. Like, at least there are people who be like, oh, come on. James Cook caught 44 out of 54 targets. He had a very high catch rate. You just remember his drops. It's not that he had a lot of drops. It's that the drops he had were very memorable and painful.
Is Bass a little bit of that?
Maybe, because when you think about it, like his numbers aren't actually as bad. Like it's 24 out of 29 isn't as bad as what it actually feels like. He only missed 1 extra point. So 49 out of 50 in the extra points, 24 out of 29 in the field goals. It's, and then obviously in the playoffs, obviously the kick. It's the combination of kind of a down season. If he makes that kick against the Chiefs,
nobody's talking about it.
Almost no one is talking about it. Like, oh yeah, he bounced back just fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
But he missed when it counted. Like,
that's all it takes, man. Optics are half the battle.
Yeah. And I will say to Jason's point here, it also matters that we gave him the big extension and paid him as one of the, not like the highest paid kicker, but as like a highly paid kicker, as a top 10-ish kicker. And that was not a top 10 season. So you can't, it's kind of like Dawson Knox. Like Dawson Knox is not a bad player. He's just a bad value. Tyler Bass, that's not like a, disastrous, not the worst kicker in the league, but you can't get paid that big money and then have that season. It's the combination also hurts as well. All right, we've made it. We are here.
Our turn.
We are ready for our final predictions. I will give you the choice. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. I don't mind. I'm not scared at all. Actually, I think I predict this score probably the most. I feel like I divert to this score. So I do have it at exactly what the spread was at 6. I have it 24-17 Bills over the Cardinals. I do think they're going to score a little bit. I think this is going to be, I don't think this is going to be like the gangbusters. I think, what was it? 48.5 was the point total.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes.
That feels a little steep to me. What's 24-17 is 41. So I'm close. It's not too far off, but I think week 1's a little wacky. To your point you made earlier, I think both teams are going to try to establish the run on each other a little bit. I think you'll see some shot plays. I don't know if we'll see connections early in week 1 all that much. If you do get some big plays, I think it's going to be some of this like gadget stuff, or Murray gets loose for a big run, when they're in man coverage or something. But I don't think we're going to see tons of smooth offense where they're just driving at will and scoring a ton of points. I think it's going to be a bit of a clunky game. 2 teams trying to establish some physicality, some 12 personnel game like somebody had commented on. But I think ultimately it is going to be too much that the trenches are going to be dominated by both sides of the ball for the Bills. And I do think Josh Allen and Sean McDermott have a leg up on Murray and Gannon in turn, and I think that still matters in the NFL. A coaching and QB combo. I think I went through it. The Bills statistically over the last 4 or 5 years, that combo has led to them being a top 5 team in the NFL consistently. They may have fallen off from being the top 5 team, but I don't think it's as far as people might think it is. And so I think the Bills are still one of the teams to beat. Cardinals are still a way off. They're a fun team. This could shape up for an upset, but if the Bills do what they're supposed to, I think they win this one easily and cover that spread.
I like it. I'm not far off of that. I have the Bills covering the spread. I also have an under. I have Bills 27, Cardinals 16. I
Okay,
think
we're
that the
close.
Cardinals move up and down the field more than we like, but we have some of the bend but don't break back, and we hold them to 3 field goals on 3 of those
Yeah, or
drives.
Kyler takes a bad sack in the red zone or
Yeah, yeah.
something.
No, it's
Yeah.
very serious. I think that they get down there and then the defensive line pressure gets to them in the moment that matters, and they have to settle for a Matt Prater field goal multiple times. And I think Tyler Bass makes all his kicks in the opening game. I think we get 3 extra points and 2 field goals, and he goes 5 for 5 on the day. And that maybe they're not like dead center every single kick, but that we feel a little bit better about him, at least for this game,
One off
and
the
get it in a
crossbar just
yeah.
to
Yeah,
mess
he
with
doinks
us.
one in, we're like, "Ah, all right, I guess it counts."
Uh,
But, it's here, and as TP brought up, is a great way to finish it with what our pump the brakes was. Never forget week 1 lies. Week
week one
1 is a
lies.
liar. It just is, and, Legit's here, I don't think he's wrong. With our schedule, this is, must win is a relative thing, but we have a really tough schedule. We can't be dropping games where we're a 6.5 point favorite. We can't. Like, you gotta find
Yeah,
a way to win this game. I don't need it to be pretty. I don't need it to be perfect. Even if they lose, it doesn't end the season. They can figure out a way. But with the division being better, with all how stacked this conference is and how many teams have a chance to go to the playoffs, there's going to be a good team or two that does not make the playoffs. We can't be giving up games where we're a touchdown favorite. We got to win these games. So I don't need perfection. I don't need blowouts. I need you to find a way to win this game.
yeah. I mean, sure, yes. I want this Bills team, this iteration of the Bills team, to beat the teams that I think they should, right? Like, I think that's something that at times, even in this McDermott era where they're well coached, sometimes they play down a little bit and they end up beating these teams and they do well against the spread and stuff, but they leave it a little close. Like, I want them to go in, beat teams that they're supposed to beat, and this is a situation for that. But in terms of must win, that's probably a saying that I'm not going to use a whole lot. We almost said it every single week last year, and they like didn't win
Well,
a
when
couple.
we got to the end of the season,
Well, it
it
was
almost
must win,
literally
yeah.
was.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, we've seen this team and this coaching staff and this organization under McDermott with Josh Allen get tested so many different ways now and have these types of tests that, like, yes, the schedule is going to be tough. Yes, it is going to be a harder path than they've had, and maybe this isn't the most talented team that they've had during this run, but like, I don't know, man. Like, until the whole season's done and they're mathematically eliminated from it, like, none of this must win stuff. It's week 1. Like, let's see how
Yeah,
this shakes
and
out.
we got
I
to
want
remember
it.
we went into the bye week last season 6-6
Correct.
out of the playoffs,
Yeah.
and then won 5 in a row down the stretch, and not only made the playoffs but won the division. Still,
Yeah.
we were 3 games back in the division with 3 games to go, and we won the division.
And this
Like,
isn't the first year they had some like crazy run to make a real nice run at the end of the season. Again, I think this comes back to a little bit like people kind of forgot who the F we are a little bit. And like every time they forget who we are, same with last year. Like, yes, there were some problems, there's hiccups and bumps, but what they did at the end of the season still, I don't think is talked about enough.
Yeah.
Like the resiliency to do that. This team's tested. There's still a lot of members on this team that have been tested and been through that stuff. So I'm not super worried about that stuff popping up here. But yeah, no, it isn't a must win. But yeah, you want to just beat these teams you're supposed to. Make it easier on yourself. Don't make it hard like you did last year.
Yeah, don't dig a hole.
No.
All right, guys, we made it. We have finally got here. Football is back. Enjoy every second of it. We're gonna have real football tomorrow night, and not only that, the kickoff is a hell of a game. Ravens,
Yeah.
Chiefs, like 2 of the top teams.
I wouldn't
in the
want
conference.
that.
Oh,
That's too wonky
that's
week 1,
a
dude. I want
really
that like
important game to
that's like a
kick off the
November,
season.
December game.
Holy
you want.
crap. So I'm gonna be watching every second of that
Yeah.
game. I cannot wait. Really, really exciting stuff. Aaron and I are going to be doing a special Q&A with our Discord One Pass members, and if you would like to figure out a way to be able to do that, you can do it by going to cover1.net/onepass. You'll find it in the show description here. The best way to be able to join us and to be able to talk with us all the time, to be able to hang out, to ask us questions, or just to support everything that we're doing here for you, is to join us as a One Pass member. We've had a lot of really cool giveaways lately. We actually just gave away 4 tickets to the autographs signings on Saturday. I think it's James Cook, Christian Benford, and Taron Johnson. We just gave away 4 tickets to 4 of our members to go get autographs from each of those 3 players this weekend. We also have a really cool partnership we're going to get close to announcing here with a brand that a lot of you guys know around Western New York. All kinds of different things that we try to do to bring you value. And honestly, just a lot of people ask us, the best way to support the things we do, all the, stats we come up with and the film breakdowns and all the different access and subscriptions. That's where that money comes from, that you guys help us prepare and support this. That's the best way to be able to help us and support us. So if you're thinking about doing it, now is an awesome time. It will carry you through the entire season, all, free agency, all the draft, my salary cap extravaganza, all the crazy stuff that's there. And that community that we built in the Discord is really, really cool. It's been a lot of fun. And one more added bonus of that is little things like that where we jump in. Aaron and I went live directly at the cut down day to kind of talk about our immediate reactions. We're going to do some live Q&A with those folks here afterwards. And you get to do like radio show call in where you can actually come up and ask us questions. And I won't do that with just crazy randoms on the internet, but our lovely One Pass people, I'll tolerate all their awesome questions and go through that.
Yeah, the community is actually a resource to me as a content creator. I am chronically on Twitter, but I'm not there all the time. And people will bring stuff up, post stuff. And then like today, when we saw the injury report and Curtis Samuel being full, all the One Pass members kind of knew that was coming, right? Like there's a lot of information goes through our community. We've built a really strong community, and it's not always the stuff that ends up out on Twitter. Some of those inside bits and pieces, we kind of talk about that stuff on One Pass. A lot of the film room stuff, the way the internet is now, we can't do as much of the film as we used to in terms of breaking it down, but we can in our Discord channel. So if you want more of the stuff that like Anthony and Eric are doing and dipping in, you want to be in the film room, especially on a week like this. Like there's nothing better where I'm sitting around and Eric's just dropping a few gems into the film channel, and that these are going to be things each and every week. Like one, if you aren't, my camera went out, but I'm going to keep talking here for a sec, Greg. If you aren't paying attention to Eric during the week, like, especially if you are a One Pass member, that like everything this guy says or predicts is going to be something that a team's going to attack or what a team's going to do. It almost is always guaranteed on Sunday that team runs exactly the thing that Eric showed or posted or did or whatever. And so again, building a really cool community, lots of information. It's become a big resource for me as a Bills fan.
Absolutely. It's been really, really cool. We appreciate it. And congratulations to everybody who made it this far into the show where you get to look at only me and not Aaron. So congratulations to you. It's an exciting way to finish the show. Thank you guys.
This is just a preview of what our Discord members will get. It'll be just voice only.
You just see the like talking volume circles coming out of the thing. All right, thank you guys so much. Appreciate everybody that hung out with us here. If you're still here listening, press that like button on the way out. It really, really helps us. That's how you can help the algorithm go that way. Leave us a comment afterwards. Tell us your score prediction in the show comments. But on behalf of awesome producer Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.